Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, inside the MMA Cave right here on Cable 14. I'm your host, Duthie. Pleased to be joined at this time by my now voiceful compatriot, Jay Peacock. Jay, pleasure to have you back with me.
Always a pleasure, Reed. Welcome Hamilton, the only show here where we speak the language of fight.
I love that line. That's absolutely the best one going in the business. And today, Jay, we got a great show. We're going to talk about the Score Fighting Series 6 that's coming to Sarnia. We're also going to talk about UFC 153, UFC on Fuel TV 6, and a very special interview. We're going to spend about 15 minutes with Lyndon Whitlock, a man who's rising the ranks really quickly here in Hamilton. He's also featured in our opening video for the show. Yeah. He's got some highlight reel knockouts, so we can't wait to get Lyndon in the chairs next to us. We have some real interesting questions to ask Lyndon, don't we, Jay?
Yes, we do. The Score's always putting on good cards lately, and going into Sarnia, we expect no different.
So when we talk about the show in Sarnia, it's going to be an absolute barn burner of a card. I don't think the Score's put one together quite like this so far.
No, you know what? When they come to Hamilton, they like to showcase the local talent. It's going to be no different going out to Sarnia, bringing in the local boys from Adrenaline, getting to London. It's not too far down the road. Bring them in, get them knuckled up, see what happens.
Well, the Sarnia show is going to start off with a bang because it's going to be the returning veteran from the Bellator Fighting Championships, recently signed on with the Score Fighting Series. Chris Hordeski is going to take on Calvin Hackney in his first fight back. And Jay, this is really a reclamation fight if you're Chris Hordeski. 18-4-1 coming into Calvin Hackney's 12-3. It's at 145 where Chris really needs a win.
Well, you know what? I got to be honest with you. Calvin Hackney, he's getting put into a fuel to the fire here. He's fed to the wolves. Chris Hordeski's going to come out there and he's just going to stop him. It's the only way it's going to go. Chris needs to bounce back. He had his lights shut off at Casino Rama. So Bellator, it's almost like a small demotion of sorts. Because the promotions work together. But you got to fight your way back up to the top. So here it goes.
Well, and there are top guys in the Score Fighting Series right now as well. And there's a lot of people that have wondered about the opponent's choice for Hordeski. Why is he going to fight Calvin Hackney? Two fighters did call him out, both Rick Glenn and Lyndon Whitlock. They both want that fight. They both want a chance to take on Chris Hordeski, and they're actually going to wind up taking one another on. Whitlock at 7-2, who we're going to talk to later, against the Gladiator Rick Glenn, who was extremely tough in his fight against Tristan Johnson. Looked like Tristan had him on the ropes early, Jay, and then Glenn absolutely turned it around and stormed back.
Well, you know what? Rick Glenn, he's got good tutelage. He's got a great camp. He's working with some top dogs in the industry, and he showcased it. Tristan Johnson's no joke either, but he was on a big layaway, put on the shelf for a little while, sitting in the back, kind of wondering what was going on. Got the Rick Glenn fight, came out thinking he was going to show, the world what he's got, and Rick Glenn stopped him and stopped him quick. I saw his mouth guard fly right across the cage. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, it was a bad ending to that fight if you're Tristan Johnson. On the other side of that fight, though, Lyndon Whitlock, who will be our guest later on, you want to talk about a guy who's got highlight reel finishes. You look back at some of his fights against McKay, against most recently Corey Houston, absolutely highlight reel finisher. Lyndon's got power in both hands. He's got a strong ground game, and he's the type of guy that nobody wants to step in the cage with at 145. Big for the weight class, tough for the weight class, and trains with some absolute animals.
Well, here's the deal with Lyndon Whitlock, man. If you're going in with him, you got a first round. You got to think first round because he's going to stop you. If he's going to finish you, if you're going to lose that fight, you're going to get finished in the first round because he doesn't come out of that first round ever. So, he's slowly building himself up into the all-around athlete that you need to be in mixed martial arts today. You have to mix those disciplines in, and he's training with some great camps all over this fine region.
And, of course, the third of three main events at the Score Fighting Series 6 is going to feature a man who, much like Chris Hordeski, is on a bit of a reclamation project himself. John Fraser came into Hamilton, and he fought local star and the guest on our pilot show, Josh Hill. Josh continued his undefeated streak, really put John Fraser's back against the wall. John desperately needs a win. He'll take on Big Show veteran Tyler Toner, but if there's ever been a time in his career where John Fraser's been motivated, it's got to be right now. This could, Jay, be his last opportunity to rise back up the ranks.
He's the haggis basher, man. He comes out there in a kilt and all, ready for war. He's always brought the fight to his opponent. He's always had a good game plan. The problem is with Josh Hill, Josh just had a better game plan. He was a better, well-rounded athlete, and he took the fight right to him, took him to where he knew he could win off his feet. If you can't stay on your feet, that's where I can beat you. That's where I'm going to put you. And Josh did just that. Now I expect John to come out against Tony and just just take it to him. Toner's going to have a hard time coming into the center of the cage. I think John's going to take the center and take it to him for sure.
John Fraser has a lot of talent. He can beat you in any number of ways. He's got great hands. He's got a very slick submission game. He tried to show it at times against Josh Hill. He was reaching for a couple of submissions. Josh just too big, too strong, and he had too much in his hands that night for John to overcome. But Tyler Toner could find himself in a lot of trouble. Yes, he's a Big Show veteran, but there's no motivation like having your back against the wall and being right at home. And I think that's something that nobody can overlook. The last time John Fraser was in Sarnia, he put on an absolutely incredible performance against Travis Redinger.
You bet.
Jay, is there any reason to expect anything different this time from the Haggis Basher?
That's why they're going to Sarnia. He's got all the fans there. He puts on a good show. There's no, I don't see any way on this planet that Toner's going to take this fight. You know, at 14-4, whatever it is, you know, come from whatever promotion you're coming to, when you're stepping into the cage and you're somebody's hometown. He just learned that with Josh Hill, right? So it's the toughest fight you're ever going to have.
It's going to be a tough one, no doubt about it. The Score Fighting Series 6 is in Sarnia. That's on October 19th. You can catch it on their website. It'll be live streaming. It'll be replayed throughout the weeks on the Score Network. It's also going to be live on Access TV for the very first time. So that's on your HD option with Kojiko. So you're going to want to make sure that you get a good look at that one. And Jay, if you're going to watch it on the stream, you can just replay the two of us on Cable 14 and watch the stream on your computer. What better way to spend a Saturday or a Friday night?
Hey, Friday night, I like to go out and have some fun. You can have some fun with us, watch the fights, you know, just enjoy what it is. Educate yourself on the fastest growing sport in the world. If you don't understand it, listen close, keep in tune, and we'll keep you on notice on what's going on in the fight game.
And Jay, as we head out to break, we should tell everybody that we are now on both Twitter and Facebook with the MMA Cave. That's facebook.com/the MMA Cave or on Twitter at MMA Cave. Jay, if people want to get in touch with us, they can definitely do it. And in our next show, we'd love to have some debates coming from the fans on the websites.
Yeah, you know, what's that thing they say on Twitter always, like, holler back, follow back? We'll do the same, you know?
Well, folks, once we come back from break, we're going to get into some serious discussion about what's coming up in the biggest promotion in the world, UFC talk, up ahead on the MMA Cave. Welcome back, folks, inside the MMA Cave. It's Duthie, joined again by Jay Peacock. And Jay, we've got some big stuff coming up in terms of the UFC, the biggest fight promotion in the world. They're headed back to Brazil, and once again, they have put together a massive card. However, it's not as big as it once was. Both Quentin Rampage Jackson and Jose Aldo had to pull out of this card, and Jay, that was replaced by arguably the greatest fighter on the planet. Anderson Silva stepped up to take on the challenge to save the card in his home country.
You know, that's what good fighters do. That's what great fighters do, actually. Anderson Silva is widely considered the best in the world, in any weight class, pound for pound, the greatest in mixed martial arts. And it's his home field, you know, and he needed to step up for this. And kudos to Stephan Bonnar for taking the fight. You know, this is a big opportunity for him. You never know. You know, it's a one-punch chance for him. He knocks out the champion. He's going to have that on his record for the rest of his life. That's a check anybody wants.
Yeah, they're marketing it as essentially the greatest fighter of all time, the champion, versus the massive underdog, the one-punch opportunity for the American Psycho, Stephan Bonnar. Jay, as weird as it sounds, I'm actually really excited to see this fight. I want to see if Bonnar can hang in there with Anderson Silva for longer than a couple of minutes. See if he can do at least better than Forrest Griffin did when Griffin met Anderson Silva.
100%, you know. This is the thing, you know. Patrick Cote back in the day, he was the first man to take Anderson Silva 3 rounds and his Achilles blew. And that's what seems to be everybody's options right now is how long can I last with Anderson Silva? Not can I beat him, how long can I last with him? Yeah, Chael Sonnen last 4.5 rounds and should have won that fight. Anderson's a champion for a reason, man. He's always going to find a way to beat you, and that's what champions do. So, you know, Stephan Bonner's going to have his hands full, but he's a he's a warrior, and he's always going to bring it to him.
Anderson Silva will definitely be bringing the fight. Stephan Bonner's going to stand toe-to-toe with him. But as we take a look at the fight card, it's going to be a beauty from top to bottom. You see Silva and Bonner, Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira making his comeback, big nog against Dave Herman. And then, Jay, we're going to get into a couple fights that we really want to look at between the two of us. And I know you've got a really interesting pick, one that I'm very excited to see myself.
Well, you know, you got the wily veteran Damian Maia, who's been in against guys like Anderson Silva, the best in the world. He's dropped down, and it looks like a really comfortable weight class for him. He's going to be taking on the American Rick the Horror Story. This fight is going to be showcased on the ground because I don't think Rick Story wants to fool with Damian Maia's power that he suddenly just had a resurgence of over the last year and a half. He's been training guys strictly for striking because he's got that, you know, ADCC world champion in his submission wrestling already in his back pocket. You don't want to go on the ground with him for too long or break your arm. But if you stand on your feet nowadays, he's got that one-punch power that just came out of nowhere. So Rick Story's got his hands full 100%.
Yeah, it's going to be a great fight between those two guys. Rick Story has got to really come up with a big performance to knock off Damian Maia, especially in his home country. You know, Maia is going to be doubly tough down in Brazil. My pick for this card is going to be Glover Teixeira versus Fabio Maldonado. And, Jay, this one to me is very interesting because Glover Teixeira was essentially blackballed from fighting in the United States for the better part of a decade. He had a lot of immigration troubles. Some troubles in his past is essentially what kept him out of fighting in the UFC. Now he's back stateside. Rampage out of the fight due to injury. Shogun didn't want to touch him. Rashad Evans didn't want to touch him. Fabio Maldonado, credit to him for stepping up, but I think this one's going to end quick. It's going to end violently, and I think Glover Teixeira is going to show why he is one of the top prospects in the world at 205 pounds.
Like you just said it, man. Three top fighters, elite athletes that have grown up in the UFC over the years. Don't want to touch Teixeira. Doesn't that say something for somebody? You know, like if people are fearing you before you even step in, you've already got the advantage, and just like you said, it's not going to last long.
Jay, moving on from UFC 153, we move to UFC on Fuel TV 6. This one's interesting because it's the first event the UFC will ever run in China, and it's going to be headlined by Rich Franklin taking on Kung Lee. They get the Vietnamese fighter to headline the card in China. Kung Lee's going to be a big draw for them, but the card's a lot more than that. It's better than a lot of what you've seen on Fuel TV to this point. They've made it quite a deep one, and Takanori Gomi versus Mac Danzig looks like it's going to be a beauty. I know it's your pick.
You know, Takanori Gomi, he transitioned from the Pride days. He was widely considered probably the best lightweight on the planet at that time, but I always tell people you never know until you step into that 8-sided octagon in the UFC where your talent really is. And they have the largest talent pool in the business. And sometimes the middle-class guys in the UFC can take on the champions from anywhere else in the world, and it's been proven time and time and time again. They brought over Shogun Rua. Didn't happen for him. Griffin stopped him. You bring over Takanori Gomi, a couple guys stop him quick, and now he's got, you know, Mac Danzig, a vegan, no body fat on this guy's body. He does nothing but transition well, grapples well, strikes well. It's going to be a good fight.
Jay, on my side, I'm going to stay in the light heavyweight division. I like the matchup between Thiago Silva and Stanislav Nedkov. This fight's going to prove one of two things. Thiago Silva got busted for steroids after a career-defining performance against Brandon Vera. He came back, got beat up by Alexander Gustafsson, the Viking. This fight is a chance for Thiago Silva to prove that he's still the killer that he was when he went into that fight against Brandon Vera. Meanwhile, on the other side, Stanislav Nedkov, the Bulgarian, is still an unknown. This is his major opportunity to step up and announce to the world that he is one of the top prospects at 205 and that he's ready for the spotlights. He's ready for perhaps a meeting with Glover Teixeira if all the cards fall in the right place.
Well, you know what? Anybody coming off a steroid problem or you know, any kind of thing like that where it's medical like that and you've been suspended, you could come back, you get showcased, you get stopped. You got to put on a good performance after that, or people are just going to think it was a fluke.
It's time for one of those two to step up and prove they belong. UFC 153 and UFC on Fuel TV 6, both coming up within the next month. Both have great cards. Make sure to check out both of them. You can catch both on Cogeco cable providers. When we come back on the MMA Cave, we're going to bring Lyndon Whitlock right in next to us, and we've got some very interesting questions to pose to him. Stay with us, the MMA Cave here on Cable 14. Back after this. Welcome back to the MMA Cave, ladies and gentlemen. Jay Peacock has moved out to my right. Joining us now to my left is Lyndon Whitlock, local Hamilton MMA star. Lyndon, thanks for being here and joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show, and the first thing we want to talk to you about is something that Jay and I have been very interested in as of late, and that's the injury epidemic that's hit MMA. We know that you've had a fight in the past canceled due to injury. It was a title fight out east. We've seen your fight previously at the Score Fighting Series get canceled, not necessarily due to injury, but due to medical paperwork not being properly done. What is going on with the epidemic right now, and why are so many fights getting canceled? Are guys just overtraining, or is there just not really an education going on right now as to what they should be doing in their camp?
I think it's 100% overtraining. You know, everybody wants to have the edge, so they push their body to the max, and that's when things fall apart. You know, you got to walk that fine line of training hard, but not training too hard.
Jay, we've seen a lot of fights canceled in previous months, and I know you and I were talking right after UFC 151 got canceled between John Jones and Dan Henderson due to an injury. What is going on in the world of MMA? Lyndon says it's overtraining. Are you on the same page with him?
You know, I am on the same page sort of deal, and sometimes it's not overtraining too. You know, if you're fighting somebody who's 7 inches taller than you, you've got to find somebody who's 7 inches taller than you to come in on. And usually it's a guy who's not in your own weight class because it's so hard to find guys like that in your weight class. So now you're bringing in a guy who's maybe 20 pounds heavier than you to train with, and you're rolling around with him for, let's say, 2-3 hours a day in the morning, 2-3 hours a day at night, wrestling. You're mixing up all your disciplines. You get hurt, and nowadays when you get hurt, you just pull out of your fight.
Well, that's the way it's been going recently in mixed martial arts. Hopefully, the UFC is able to find a way to stem that tide. But moving more specifically towards your career, Lyndon, last time around in Hamilton, the Score Fighting Series 5, you were set up to fight Fernando Vieira, and unfortunately, the fight never happened. You were one of the main headliners on that card. Medical paperwork seemingly was the problem. Can you give us a little more insight onto what exactly happened and why that fight fell apart?
Just didn't get his medical work done. You know, we have 3 jobs as a fighter: get your paperwork done for the medicals, make weight, and fight. That's it. It's pretty simple. You know, there's no excuses. I literally just take a piece of paper to the doctor. He does the work. So, you know, I'm sure there's some excuses on his side, but as a professional, there are no excuses. You get it done.
100%. You know, I have a quick question for you. A lot of people aren't educated with the system that you have to go through to get your medicals and how hard it is in Ontario specifically to get the license to be able to fight after. You want to kind of walk the audience through what you have to go through to get your medicals?
It's insane. You got to get your CT scan, blood work, chest x-ray, MRI, ECG, EKG, or all that stuff. It's crazy. It takes probably about 3 to 4 weeks. And, you know, you need a doctor that wants to work with you, wants to help you along, because if you have a fight in 6 weeks, it takes a lot longer to get all that stuff done.
And this is all while you have to go through training and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, big time. It's a little frustrating. But if you find a good doctor, you know, he helps you out, he gets it all done for you. I can only imagine if a doctor doesn't want to work with you. You know, they can make it really hard.
Lyndon, coming up at the Score Fighting Series 6 in Sarnia, you've got a very interesting fight. We know that you and Chris Hordesky were sort of on a collision course at one time.
Yep.
Rick Glenn fights Tristan Johnson, blows everything apart, blows all the predictions out of the water. Now you will take on Rick the Gladiator Glenn from Duke Rufus's camp, and of course he'll have Bellator welterweight champion Ben Askren in his corner. We know who you're going to have in your corner.
Yep.
Probably any number of Scott McCovey, Josh Hill, and the long list of guys that you've been training with. What does this fight mean to you, and what do you feel you have against Rick Glenn going into this fight where you can take advantage?
It's a big fight for me. You know, I want the stepping stones. I want to get the fights that are going to push me to the big shows. And Rick's one of those guys. I think he's probably the closest guy right now in the Score Fighting Series to getting signed. So if I stop Rick, it's a big notch on my belt. As to the fight, we're just going to go out there and see. You know, I think I'm going to have the power. I'm going to have the strength advantage and the clinch and all that. But Rick's a crafty guy. He's not going to go out there and lay down. So it's going to be a tough fight.
Yeah, it's one I know that I'm really looking forward to seeing, Jay. You get 2 top quality welterweights, or featherweights going up against one another. One guy's going to have the Bellator welterweight champion in his corner. The other one's going to have a future UFC champion in his corner in Josh Hill. I mean, this is really a pick-em between 2 guys that could both be in the show. I'm not just saying this because he's here. I think Lyndon's got this with his hands.
You know what? It's like American top team style versus Canadian first class. It's the crew from Canada versus the crew from the States. It's the classic border wars. It's Sarnia. It's made for Sarnia, man. You know, like, Lyndon, all the best to you, man. I hope you take him out.
Thanks,
because I want to see Canadians in the UFC for life.
So do I.
All of them.
Yep.
You know, like, our fan base here and the way that the region has grown the sport, the business aspect of the sport might not have climbed as fast, but the talent pool is rising, and, you know, you're one of the best in the game. I'm looking forward to this fight.
Thanks.
Now, Lyndon, one of the things that we talked about when we had Josh Hill here on our pilot episode was the close-knit friendship that you have with himself and with Scott McCovey as well, how you guys sort of represent one another, you find each other fights. Can you talk about what that relationship means to you and how you guys help each other? We've heard it from Josh's perspective, but we said on that episode we wanted to hear it from yours as well.
It's easier to go through this whole process. You know, it's stressful. It's nice to have those people there that are they keep you grounded, and they're always there to talk or always help you there to push through a training session. So it's nice to have those guys there. And you know, our whole camp, even from Antonio Carvalho out in Oshawa, like everybody's family. It's not just us three guys, but because we're around each other the most, it looks like, you know, we're the closest. It's a very tight camp we got.
Now, you spoke about Antonio Carvalho. Can you talk about the different gyms that you've gone around to the province to train at in anticipation for this fight? I know that you guys travel around to a lot of different gyms in this area. It's got to get a little bit confusing when you wake up on a Monday morning and you got to figure out your schedule for the week.
I don't even know what day it is. I just know what I'm doing tomorrow, but what I did today. It's awful. But yeah, we go to Bruckman's in Oshawa, Tap Out in Burlington, Parabellum in Oakville, Pure BJJ in Hamilton, SST in Hamilton. I might be missing one in there, but basically every day is a different gym, and you know, there's new bodies. People are there to take care of us and push us to our max, but be safe.
Do you have another job on the side? Do you have a full-time job right now?
I do teach. I'm teaching quite a bit more, and I do plumbing as kind of a part-time, full-time job.
A lot of people don't understand that, right? The UFC, when you're in the UFC, you're training for a life, it's your career, because you're already there at the, you know, the upper echelons of what the sport is. And you're on the lower tiers, and you're in the minors, quote unquote. You gotta, you know, work your keep, and these are making only a side paycheck.
Exactly. You know, Monday I'll wake up, I'll train at 8 in the morning. I'll go to work all day for 8 hours. I'll go right to the gym, teach, and I'll go home or go back to the different gym and train. So I'm looking at a 14-hour day most days.
Wow, incredible.
That's absolutely incredible. And Lyndon, I've got a lot of confidence in you moving up the ladder into the UFC. I know Jay does as well. One of the things we wanted to talk to you about as we're running close to the end here was who you're looking to fight in the future. I know everybody's sort of got some dream fights in mind as they climb up the ranks. Could it be, say, a fight with Jose Aldo in the future? Could it be Mark Hominick, maybe a Canadian-on-Canadian matchup? Where do you want to go in the sport, and who would you like to get into the cage with?
You know, that's not for me to decide. I just want to beat Glenn. That's all that matters. And then when we wake up on the 20th, we'll sit down with my manager and my team and my coaches, and we'll figure out another goal. I can't look past anybody. The sport's too tough nowadays.
Smart. Very smart.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
Do you want to tell people how to get a hold of you, maybe find you on Twitter, come see you where you coach, something like that?
You can catch me. I coach at Parabellum in Oakville and Tap Out in Burlington. You can find me on Facebook, Lyndon Whitlock, and Twitter at Lyndon Whitlock. And, you know, that's about it.
All right, good stuff.
And Jay, before we close out, I think one of the things that we're going to have to do, we're going to have to take some cameras down to Parabellum and maybe do a session with Lyndon Whitlock and get that on camera for the folks on the MMA Cave.
Like a sparring session? No way.
Oh, I'll step in there with him.
Okay, because I'll hold the camera. You can get your face punched.
Yeah, we can beat up the commentator day.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Sounds like fun, yeah.
Sounds good.
He's been waiting a long time to get his hands on me.
You can be like one of those little balloon dummies. When you hit them once, they come back up. Just make sure you get back up, eh?
Well, the first few times I think I can still get back up.
Good stuff.
Lyndon Whitlock, thank you so much for joining us here today on the MMA Cave. It was a pleasure to have you, and we want to wish you all the best in your fight on October 19th against Rick Glenn.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
And Jay, the two of us, we're going to be back again in the month of November to talk much more about the UFC. We're going to talk some aftermath of what happened at the Score Fighting Series 6, and there's going to be a whole lot more developments, we're sure, around the MMA world. It's just tough trying to jam it all into 30 minutes.
Yeah, there's some guy with 3 letters coming up, GPS or GSP or something like that. That fight's going to be crazy.
He's coming back. GSP is going to be in the cage in November. We're going to talk about it. It's going to be a great show, but that's all we've got for this month. We want to thank everybody for watching. Remember, you can get us at www.facebook.com/the MMA Cave or on Twitter at MMA Cave. Thank you for watching. For my co-host, Jay Peacock, I'm Duthie. Good night, everybody.